Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome. This is the first EFC and Women in Football webinar, and we're here to celebrate a new partnership between these two organisations. And I'm very lucky to be hosting today. I have worked with both, know the incredible work that both do, and can firsthand say this is going to be a pretty special partnership. And you are going to hear exactly why throughout the next hour and a half or so. So it's a real pleasure to host so many of you as well, joining online, many of the women ahead of International Women's Day, and welcome the men as well who've come along and joined this morning from across the game. And I understand, yeah, we do have hundreds of people from across various clubs and football organisations from all over the world. So on whichever time zone you're tuning in from, hello and welcome to all of you. We've got a great lineup and we want you to get involved as well. You can probably see the email address here, or I hope you can, sustainability@efcfootball.com. We welcome you asking questions, and we welcome you doing it also on this forum today. You'll be hearing from a couple of speakers and you get the chance to ask the questions as well as me. So I'd love it if you could put your questions in the bar in the Q&A section at the top there, and anything else you need to know, please feel free, of course, to use the email address as well. And this is who you're going to be hearing from today. We've got a great agenda, which will include a little bit later on the Q&A with the chair of Women in Football, Ebru Kuksel, who has, a very impressive career today, and you'll be hearing all about that. And before we get to that, I want to give the EFC CEO, Charlie Marshall, an opportunity to welcome you as well and speak about this new partnership with Women in Football. So over to you, Charlie.
Thank you very much, Hayley. Can you all hear me? I'll just take that from one of you. Yes, good. Okay, well, look, Hayley, it's great to see you here, in particular, after you hosted our successful Club Connect event in Madrid last year. I think we're going to be talking a little bit more about what we're doing with Club Connect next in this year. But as ever, we really appreciate you, Hayley, supporting us, not just with this webinar, but with all the work that we do. Welcome also to Ebru and Yvonne from Women in Football. This is really a great moment for us, both EFC and Women in Football, to take our partnership to the next level. And of course, welcome to everybody who has given their time today and dialed in. It's really a privilege to speak with you and be surrounded by such strong women and men, albeit virtually, and within EFC as an administration, but more importantly, across European football. So very briefly, for those of you on this call today who may not know so much about EFC, we are the European football clubs. We were previously known as ECA. As of late last year, we rebranded to EFC to put football at the heart of everything we do. We represent more than 800 European football clubs from across the 55 countries in Europe. And our goal is to promote and protect their interests and ensure the sustainable growth of the European club game. We have long-term partnerships with both UEFA and FIFA, which allow us to represent our clubs in the most important football discussions and decisions in Europe and worldwide. We advocate strongly for the development of both men's and women's club competitions. We deliver world-class events that bring clubs and industry leaders together, and we provide benefits that support the growth of our members in all facets of their work, both on and off the pitch. So turning to both Women in Football and also women's football, two very different things, as I am always at pains to say. At EFC, we have a long-held commitment to both supporting and providing opportunities for women who work in football, and for the growth and development of the women's game as well. It's very, very pleasing to be formalising the EFC and Women in Football partnership, and to be committing to building on some very important and impactful work we've carried out together in recent years, which I'll just talk a little bit about. So chief among this work is the EFC Women on Board programme, which we created with the support of Women in Football back in 2024. This Women on Board programme provides women in football with the knowledge, skills, and network to take on senior executive and board level roles in the game. It has been and continues to be a major success story for us at EFC. In fact, our current vice chair at board level is Martina Pavlova from Sparta Prague, and she was part of the first cohort and is a huge supporter of the programme. As well as Martina, graduates of this programme have gone on to join our EFC board, which highlights our commitment not just to the knowledge and learning aspect of the programme, but to providing real, concrete, senior opportunities for women in the game. And I hope somewhere in the hundreds of people on this call, we have Ingrid Valherle from Standard Liège and Trina Hopp of FC Nordsjælland, as they're both specific examples of women who have come through this programme and now sit on the EFC board. We hosted the second cohort of the Women on Board programme in Rome at our General Assembly last year, and we're really looking forward to continuing to build and enhance it in the years ahead. And so again, a really big thank you to Ebru and Yvonne and your whole team who support us on this. On the EFC side, and I know she will speak to you later, and many of you know her already, a big thank you to our Head of Sustainability, Gaia Pretner, for driving things forward internally, for really being a champion, both for women on board and so many other things that we do. And our commitments to work and support women in football go beyond this programme. We have ambitious targets for female representation on our board, and particularly on all of our working groups, the hundreds and hundreds of club representatives that work with us on a daily basis across all the aspects of club football in our working groups. And Gaia will share a few details with you on that shortly. Out of those 800 clubs I mentioned earlier, our EFC members, 141 of them are now women's clubs. It's the fastest growing segment of our membership. And we strive to support and grow and develop them both on and off the pitch. Next month, we're going to be hosting one of our major event series, our Club Connect event series in Lisbon. And this is focused on women's football, bringing together clubs and stakeholders from across the women's game to share their knowledge and expertise. And we want as many of our members there as possible. We also have a dedicated women's football working group. This is chaired by Michelle Kang of Olympique Lyon and now also London City Lionesses. This has representatives from across the women's clubs that we have within our network. I think we have 18 European countries represented within that working group. We also deliver medical and high performance events focusing specifically on the women's game. We've developed and launched research and reports on the growth of girls' football academies and the transition to the professional women's game. We've played a big role working alongside UEFA to deliver new and enhanced women's competitions. This season is a big season in the women's game at European level. As everybody knows, we have a new UEFA Women's Champions League, entirely newly formatted, and critically, the introduction of a second European competition, the UEFA Women's Europa Cup, meaning that now 61 women's clubs participate in European competitions every season. And this was compared with only 16 before this current season. So a growth of 16 clubs to 61 women's clubs competing in European competitions at the highest level every season. And in addition to all of that, we have a commercial joint venture with UEFA, a company called UC3. And UC3 plays the exclusive sole role in marketing and selling the rights to all of the club competitions, women's and men's included. And in this, we have specific strategies for the women's competitions, seeking, of course, to balance revenue growth, which is important for the women's game, but also to drive reach, distribution, and engagement to really help drive the profile and awareness and excitement around the sport itself. As of this season, we have some fantastic broadcast distribution partners who are carrying this content, particularly Disney across all of Europe, plus the European Broadcast Union, ensuring that there is a really strong degree of free-to-air coverage, universally available for all football fans across Europe. In the States as well, we have a huge partner in Paramount Plus, which is also the distribution partner for the men's game, who is putting an enormous amount of investment and passion behind the European women's club game. So, to bring things to a conclusion, at least on my side, there is clearly and always will be still much more work to do for us to support and drive both the women's game, but also women in the game. We want to ensure that women and girls know that there are many career options, development paths, and exciting ways to build your professional life within football. We have 90,000 full-time equivalents, just as a statistic across all of our member clubs, an awful lot of employment and professional opportunities for women everywhere. So today, we want this to be another positive step. These webinars and all of our work promoting inclusion and diversity in football will now, as of today, fall under a new umbrella brand. So we're launching Everyone's Game FC today. Guy will talk a bit more about it, but it really is designed to make very, very clear and marketable our commitment to access to football and to clubs being at the heart of the game. So thank you all again for being here, and I will hand back the floor to you, Hayley.
Charlie, thank you very much indeed. Look, I think everyone will hear there about how exciting it's going to be, not just the current impact that you're already having, but this further commitment as well to ensure that women in the game not just have these opportunities to work in football, but also to take a seat at some of the highest levels of the game, to influence its future as well. And it looks like a really, really bright future and a bright partnership ahead. And things have certainly changed since my day entering this industry 20 years ago. And I'm very grateful to be involved in something like particularly this today, which wouldn't have happened when I was starting out, and to have these partnerships continue. And yeah, I just think it's so exciting. I've worked with women in football for a good few years now and see the incredible work that they do. All led by Yvonne Harrison, the CEO of Women in Football. So I'd just like to invite her here to share a few words as well. So welcome, Yvonne.
Thank you very much, Hayley. Hello, everybody. It's really great to be on here today. I'd love to say a big thank you to Charlie, Gaia and the team at EFC for obviously choosing to partner with women in football to accelerate progress for women working in the football industry. We are delighted to see the impact our partnership's already created, and as Charlie mentioned, excited to take things to the next level too. So some of you will be familiar and part of our community already, and there'll be other people that have joined the call today who are not so familiar with women in football. So I'll briefly just touch upon the work that we do. For those that don't know, we're a membership organisation and a community of over 12,000 people, women and men and non-binary people around the world, and it is completely free to join Women in Football. Our vision is to ensure we have a football industry where women can thrive and reach their potential, and we do this by supporting both individuals and organisations as the partner of choice for driving gender equality in the football workforce specifically. Now, our membership includes working right across the industry, so people from the boot room to the boardroom, both on and off the pitch, and in both men's and women's football. Our team work tirelessly to support our members with their professional development, to celebrate their amazing successes, to challenge discrimination where that's necessary, and to create diverse networking opportunities. So events like today, online meetups, and our flagship Be Inspired conference, which takes place on the 16th of September in Wembley, England. We support organisations like EFC, but clubs directly, leagues and brands to achieve their ambitions around gender equality through bespoke programmes. We advocate for change across the football industry as a trusted advisor to governing bodies, government departments, regulators and policymakers too. And the governance changes that Charlie talked about are really, really welcomed and are already making a difference, which is absolutely fantastic. We also have industry-leading research, which reflects the lived realities of people working in the game, particularly women. And this insight drives our work. right across the system to both improve opportunities for women working in the game, to come into the game, but also to progress through the ranks within the industry itself. Now, our members tell us that they value women in football for its role in opening up doors, for building confidence, for giving them a voice actually in the sector where many women do still feel underrepresented. And most are drawn to the community not only to progress their careers, but also to be part of a bigger movement that aligns incredibly well with women's football and our passion to support the growth more broadly as well. So it's wonderful to hear about the EFC's commitments, specifically supporting the women's game too. As Charlie said, there is more to do. We know this, and it's great to kind of have this event on the eve of, International Women's Day coming on Sunday. And today is another positive step towards gender equality. I think the launch of Everyone's Game FC sets out a collective commitment to create that change. And as Charlie said, really puts clubs right at the heart of that. So I just want to say a massive thank you on behalf of Ebru, myself, the board and the team at Women in Football. Thank you to Sarah in our team who supports a lot of the day-to-day work of our partnership with EFC as well. Thank you for being intentional about the support that you're giving to women in the workforce and helping move people into positions of influence, as Hayley said, across both the men's and the women's game. This support really, really does matter, and we're very proud to play our part here at Women in Football. I'll pass you back to Hayley. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Exciting, I'm sure. You've heard there Yvonne speak with so much excitement, and you're all going to be part of this as well. And for the men that are joining, of course, you're our allies, you're our champions, you're the men here who can help us women thrive and succeed, particularly in these positions as well, these higher positions, leadership positions, and that's what we're going to be hoping for from this partnership. I'd like to introduce Gaia Pretner, who is Head of Sustainability at EFC, and she's going to share a little bit more about her work on the EFC sustainability strategy that led to equality, diversity and inclusion being prioritised, and from which the Women on Boards and Everyone's Game FC has been developed as well. So please welcome Gaia.
Good morning, Hayley. Thank you very much for the introduction. Thank you very much to all of you for being here today. It's quite an exciting moment for me because we have been working for quite a lot of time on the development of this partnership and the whole related activities. As anticipated by Charlie Marshall, we thought a lot what should have been the name of this network. And as you probably know, we recently rebranded and we now want to be more open, more innovative. We want all of our clubs to feel represented by our work, by our activities. And when I say all our clubs, I mean any size club, any people working inside the clubs, be it the football side, but also the administration level. So we have services for people working in legal, in commercial, in marketing, in communication, in sustainability, of course. And we really want everyone to feel welcome in the EFC family and feel everyone to participate to our events and to the initiatives of this network. That's why the name that we selected for the network is Everyone's Game FC. So from now on, when you hear about Everyone's Game FC, you know that we're talking about this network and the activities that the network would put forward thanks to the partnership with Women in Football. So as Hayley said, a little bit of background of how we finally unveiled this network name and the partnership with Women in Football. So the developing of the network started in January 2023. I wasn't even here yet. I started only in May 2023. But at that time, we felt there was a need to collect some data about women representation in our member clubs. And this gave some important information on the stakeholder engagement process that then, when I joined, I put in place to develop the sustainability strategy of EFC. For those of you that are not familiar with sustainability, when you have to develop a sustainability strategy, you always start doing the stakeholder engagement in the football family in this case. We ended up approving and launching the sustainability strategy in April 2024. That's where, for the first time, we introduced gender equality targets that I will unveil very soon. And once the strategy was published, of course, we need to start working on the implementation and the achievement of the targets. And the first step to do so was the test of the first edition of the Women on Board program in September 2024, and the start of a research project that is still ongoing, whose aim is to identify what are the drivers and the barriers of female leadership in football. On the basis of the preliminary results of this research, we decided that networking in person was also an important element, and we tested the first side event, in-person side event, dedicated to the network activities at our General Assembly in Rome last October 2025. So this was an overview. Now I'll go a little bit into details of every single step. So starting from the survey in 2023, this was distributed among 94 clubs, which nowadays can seem a low number because we have over 800 clubs. But at that time, we were only 256 clubs. So it was basically more than 1/3 of our overall membership. The clubs who participated to the survey have an average of 184 employees, going from very, very tiny clubs run by volunteers to the biggest club with more than 1,000 employees. And the data we collected about this were that on average, these clubs have 30% of their overall administration employees that were female. And these percentages was varying greatly from 5 to 55%. But when you were looking at the executive level, the percentage went down to only 18%. And again, this percentage was varying from 0 to 60%. So not exactly, a good number, let's say. Another important element that we derived from this research was that you may think that when you have the higher percentages at the administration level, that's also where you may see a higher percentage also at the executive level of women, but that was not the case. So the feeling and the impression was that probably there isn't an internal ladder mechanism that allows the women working at the middle management level to step up in their career path to the executive position. And maybe there are some few executive women that move around the different clubs. So that was a hint of some of the work we could have focused on at EFC to improve a little bit the representation of female in our member clubs. The second step was the development and approval of the sustainability strategy. As I said, we started with a stakeholder engagement process that included interviews with 20 key footballer stakeholders like FIFA, UEFA, leagues, federations, some of our clubs, some NGOs. Of course, there was a wide consultation of the sustainability working group because sustainability is one of our work stream. We did a survey with our member clubs, and finally, we consulted with the board members. And one of the key topics that emerged out of this stakeholder engagement process was that equality, diversity, and inclusion was one of the material priorities on which EFC should have focused on in the implementation and development of the strategy. So in the framework of the equality, diversity, and inclusion policy that we included in our strategy, we managed to include gender equality targets. The targets are for female representation on the EFC board, and here we have a 25% by 2027 and 35% by 2030. I would like to clarify that these dates are based on the closure of the next cycle. So the next cycle will reopen in 2027. EFC will have a new board election, and that's a good opportunity to have more women represented there. As for the following cycle, we put 2030 because the sustainability strategy ends at 2030, but actually the aim is to get it for the following cycle. The same reasoning applies to the members of our working groups. We have 9 work streams, 9 working groups. Each work stream is around 25 representatives in the working group. And here we want also to have more women involved, because very often participating to a EFC working group is a good career ladder for these women, both inside their own club, but also potentially in the future for higher responsibility position also in our board or in our representative committees, either at FIFA or at UEFA. So we see it as a very good step to support their career development. And here the objectives are even higher. So it's 40% by 2027 and 50% by 2030. What are the numbers today? So at the board, actually, we are quite close to the target, because we are now, as of June 2025, we had 23% representation, so 8 women versus 35 men. And we had 2 more from the previous year. As for the working group, instead, the target seems a little bit more difficult to reach, because as of today, we have 22%. But again, also the working group will have to be reconstituted in the new cycle in 2027. So essentially, we have this year enough to select, identify suitable candidate to sit in the working groups. Maybe 40% is still quite a little bit an ambitious target to reach, but I believe we can definitely hit the 30, 32, 33%. And that's where we started thinking, what can we do to support the achievement of these targets, both at the board level and at the working group level. So for the board level, I already mentioned the development in cooperation with women in football. That was our first project on which we worked together, of the EFC Campus Women on Board program. The objective is to really select women that are already working quite at a high level in their club, and that are suitable to sit in their own club board, and therefore also potentially in our board. So it's a short program of 3-day in person here in Lyon, followed by some online session, and also the opportunity to participate to our General Assembly. We did 2 editions. The first one was in September 2024, and the second was in August 2025. Each edition has around 15 participants. So we have, around 30 per year. That's the target. But the interesting thing was that out of the first edition, 2 of the participants that made it to our board, Ingrid Van Emle and Trine Hopp. And 2 were promoted quite shortly after the program, and all the others expanded their network and their, let's say, influence also inside the club. So now we will have 2 editions this year. One is now in April. We closed the applications a few days ago, and we had quite a lot of good candidates, and the second edition will be this August. But of course, the intent is to have at least 2 editions per year. When it comes to instead developing the candidates for our working group, we focus on our research outcomes. And the methodology of the research, the first step was to interview first 20 women and 20 men working exactly these roles in football, mainly in clubs, on which are the drivers and the barriers on female leadership in football. The next step will be a survey to be launched very soon. So you will receive it, and I will really appreciate if you could take 10 minutes to fulfill it, because it would be very useful for us. And the main outcomes of the research were essentially the following. So first of all, since the majority of the women don't sit in the leadership position, they're not CEO, owner, or president, they tend to be less visible than men. Even the 30% women representation in clubs might seem a high number to many of you, because actually there are more women working in football than one we think or we perceive, and this is due to the lack of visibility issue. And this is very difficult for us to tackle because at EFC, in the end, we have 800 clubs. We work through our MRM system where we have contacts from every club, but the contacts we have are mainly male. So it's difficult for us to identify, to speak, and to directly share our activities to women working in our member clubs. And at the same time, the lack of visibility means also a lack of role models for the younger women that work in clubs and would like to develop their own career. If they don't see someone that made it, it's more difficult to imagine how you could, as a woman, reach a very important position in football. So the proposed activity to tackle this issue is essentially doing these webinars. This is the first one. But doing webinar help us growing the contact that are interested to this activity. And all the people that are today following the webinar that receive probably the invite, I would really appreciate if you could, for the future webinar, share it with all the women working in your club or in other clubs, all the men that you think could be good male ally for women in football, because we really want to expand the number of contacts we have of women working in our member clubs. And in terms of tackling the role model issue, every webinar will have an interview of a powerful woman that made it into football, and also of a couple of men that were very good male allyship. So also to provide some insights and information on how you can develop your career in football. Networking, this is another element that many women lamented. Again, if you are not at the top of your club, probably you're not the one that is sent to the conferences, to the networking event, to the EFC events. So we decided to organize at least 2 side events per year dedicated to the network, to the Everyone's Game FC network. One will be always at our General Assembly, and one will be at one of our Club Connect events. This year, we have one in April in Lisbon on women's football. Education and training, that's another element. Maybe if you're not in the top position, you are less qualified to access high-level educational and training program. So here we are trying to fulfill this problem with Women on Board program for the top position, and again with these network webinars for those that maybe are a little bit the earlier stage of their career and they're looking to improve their soft skills for growing in their career. And also with Women in Football, we are developing a mentorship program. Finally, this is very, very important. I would really like to thank all the men that are online today, the male allyship. If women just talk to women, we will never make it. It's really, really important that men help us participate more in all the football organization activities. So this network is called Everyone's Game because we didn't want to call it Women's Game or something like that. We wanted everyone's to really feel welcome, and we really welcome to have more men participating to our activities. What are in practice, the planned Everyone's Game network activities for 2026. So we will do 8 webinars. As I said, the webinar will always have an interview of a female leader in football. But then instead of the presentation of the activities that we are doing today, the webinar will focus on a workshop on this general soft skills, I would say, topics like influence and persuasion, authentic presence, being worried, inspiring and motivating others. As you can see, these topics can be of interest for anyone, be a man or a woman. And again, the intent is to provide useful sessions for all our members. We will have also two, as I said, in-person side events, EFC Club Connect Women's Football Lisbon, 15 and 16 of April 2026, and the EFC General Assembly in Copenhagen from 28th to the 30th of September. Again, the content and the format and the speakers of this event will be defined in collaboration with Women in Football. And then the next two editions here, you have the precise dates of the Women on Board program. Both will be held here in Lyon. And all the participants to these two editions will be invited to the General Assembly in Copenhagen in 2026. And here there is an overview of the next dates. So please save the dates of the next webinars of the network. So today, 6th of March, was the launch of the network. Next to the International Women's Day. The next one will be on the 17th of April. The main topic will be inclusion for a competitive edge. And I'm really, really happy and honored to announce that the powerful woman that will be interviewed on that day will be Laura McAllister, UEFA Vice President. So I'm really looking forward to this session. Please save the date. The time will always be the same, 10:30 to 12 Central Europe time. And then we already planned on the 29th of May, we will focus on courageous conversations. And on the 26th of June, we will focus on allyship. And here we would really like to have a strong male interviewee, and we really hope many men will join. Then we will take a break for the 2 summer months, and we start again from September, and we will have 1 webinar for each month, September, October, November, and December. But we haven't yet identified topics on which we want to focus these webinars. Because we want to hear from you. So if you could tell us among these 7 topics, you can select a maximum of 3, which ones you would like us to focus the next sessions of the webinar. So again, these are all very general topics. They can be useful for anyone. You have conflict management, resilience, confidence building, influence and persuasion, inspiring and motivating others, being more ready, and communication with impact. So please take a moment to think which ones could be more useful for you in your career progression, and select the 3 that you believe would be more useful. So I see not many answers yet, so please, it's very important for you, if you want that we produce content that are relevant to you, that you give us your insights. We will take them into consideration to define which ones we're going to focus on. Some of these sessions are part of the Women on Board program. So I did the program. I can tell you that they are short sessions, but can be very, very, very useful. Not just for your career, but sometimes also in your daily life, actually. So, okay, we start 82 response. I think we can wait a little bit more to have more. If you haven't done yet, please answer the poll question. So I think the main ones are conflict management, confidence building, influence and persuasion, and inspiring and motivating others. Okay, thank you very much. We will take them into careful consideration. So before I hand over again to Hayley for the interview with Ebru, I would like to ask you if there is any question, you can write it down in the Q&A. Otherwise, we can move on to the interview part. Yeah.
No one dare ask a question. You maybe covered so much that nobody needs to ask a question. So consider that a job very well done in explaining what is there for the future. And I think, looking at those, I just like to say, looking at those targets as well, I think it's quite clear you've shown that there's going to be support there, and I think this partnership will allow those who are looking on that pathway to have the support, to have that advice when they're looking into these roles, you know, when you're trying to aspire to potentially being a board member, or maybe that's something you're targeting in the future. How do you get there? Who's there to help you? Who's there to back you up? And I'm hoping that everyone involved today will see quite clearly that there are people there to help them and guide you as well on your journey. And speaking to people like our next guest can also provide a little bit of an insight into how she got to where she is in this incredible position. And we do welcome questions as well. I have so many for our next guest, but please, if you're listening to Ebru, everybody, please feel free to put some questions to her as well. She is Ebru Kuksal. Many of you will be familiar with her. She's going to draw on her experiences working within football. She is a former international investment banker. She holds a very impressive portfolio of roles, including the chair of Women in Football, and sits on the EFC Foundation board as well. So, Ebru, this might take you a while, but I would just like to ask you as well. You've held, of course, several distinct positions in world football, but start us off. Could you run through them, please?
Sure. First of all, greetings everybody from down under. My workplace this week is Sydney, actually, and it's a privilege for me to be interviewed by dear Hayley today. And yes, over the last 25 years, I've had the privilege of seeing football from every angle, starting with club to federation to confederation, the top governing body, player representation, NGO, private equity. And today I have a portfolio career of 6 board roles that brings me across continents and across, again, football, tennis, and also investment management and private equity as well. And one of the common threads, needless to say, across all these roles have been observing how sustainable growth and change only happens when governance, culture, and accountability move together. And we can get into more of that later.
Yeah, and look, your career actually has, you've said there, has been primarily spent in 2 male-dominated industries, finance and football. But how did your career as a financial analyst begin in New York? And was that something that you always wanted to do? Was that the dream?
Well, some of you know I am from Turkey and I grew up there. And after finishing high school, I got a scholarship to study in the US at Brown University. And I graduated with a dual degree and magna cum laude honors in economics and international relations. And probably like several of you who grew up in cultures where someone's value is measured by how successful they are, which actually puts a lot of pressure on many of us and impose goals on us that are not necessarily our own goals, but those imposed by society, by our parents, and we do sometimes things that, to make our parents happy. So as someone who was educated under very difficult financial conditions of the family, I felt it necessary that I went into an industry which would help me make some money. So that was finance. And I joined Morgan Stanley on Wall Street in 1990. Really interesting 2 years, probably one of the most difficult time in my life in terms of really big time commitment and expectations. And but it taught me a lot about both analytical discipline and also making sure that you were able to defend your ideas with facts and base your convictions on, numbers, which actually is something that I am quite strong in. And these skills turned out to be quite helpful in football later on as well, although sports is obviously quite emotional and is based on, performance on the pitch and success on the pitch. That cannot come and happen without the financial discipline and the longevity of the sustainable financial growth. So the high pressure environment in football, I mean, finance also prepared me well for the multi-stakeholder, difficult environment in football as well. And all of these were skills and traits that were transferable to football.
Yeah, which you did by then joining, of course, Galatasaray 25 years ago, returning back to your roots, you could say, rising from CFO to the CEO. Look, how did that opportunity actually come about? Did you seek this position? And actually, what was the reaction to your initial appointment as well?
Well, I never thought I would work in the sports industry. I was a former athlete growing up. I was a swimmer. I played water polo. I played basketball. So my life was always full of sports, but I never thought it would turn into a career. And once again, it was not by choice. I was working for a private equity firm, and the firm invested in Galatasaray in 2000. That was my transaction. I worked, on the acquisition project, and I had just, I had one child, and while I was at the private equity firm, my second kid was born, and they're only 1.5 years apart. And I was told after the transaction and after giving birth to my second child that I could no longer work at the fund because they didn't think I could keep up with the pace anymore. What an assumption and what a disappointment. And so I spent the weekend thinking I would hire a lawyer and sue them, or, take the offer from Galatasaray to become a CFO for them. And I received a call from the president of the club, and he was telling me, Ebru, this is an industry that is growing incredibly fast. I know you're very disappointed, but why not walk out of your comfort zone and, take a different opportunity? So that's how I got into football. The initial reaction obviously was one of curiosity by the people. Who is this woman? And of course, comes with a lot of skepticism. What would she know about football? So it was a very difficult period when I had to overcome the skeptics and probably work harder than anybody else to prove that I was suitable for the role. And I worked extremely hard and was always the top performer, and, rigorous preparation, showing my competence. But it actually became a little bit easier when results started showing, whether it was in the growth in revenues or the financial stability or the success on the pitch. And then the conversation became more about what you can deliver rather than who you are. And that brought in the credibility and the respect and the track record along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. I've heard a lot of people talk before, as a woman, you have to work twice as hard to receive half the recognition, and therefore you push yourself in a very, very different way. I just want to ask actually what advice you would give to maybe others, some of the parents, the mothers who can now have children and continue in a career. I've done it myself, went back to work months after having a little one and was welcomed, but we're living in a different time now, maybe. But I do work in a male-dominated organization in football and in media. But for those who are maybe looking at motherhood or are already parents looking to expand a family, you're such a great example of someone who, I don't want to use the term not going to let their children get in the way, but not going to let those who have those opinions get in the way of you succeeding in your career. What's the biggest word of advice you could give to working mums?
Yeah, I mean, not feel guilty, first of all, because you're feeling double guilty. You feel that you're not enough for the workplace. You're not, putting your 100% there, and you feel that you are sometimes neglecting your children. I think you just have to do whatever you need to do in order to keep both of them going. And for me, bringing my children to the workplace was very interesting. So every weekend I had to go to the matches, right? So I would bring my kids to the stadium. They loved being there, and it then became everybody else's problem. So there was people running around, trying to find my daughter from somebody's, box, or my son, getting onto the pitch or something. But there's no guilt associated to it. And the amount of time you spend with the kids has to be the quality time. It's not the amount of hours that you're there for them, but it's what you do when you're there with them. Therefore, not an easy balance at all, but there is no need to sacrifice either. I think it's a difficult period for a few years, but if you're quite determined and let's say ambitious, as I was at the time, I think you just do it at the expense of taking care of yourself a little bit, unfortunately. But it then falls also on our employers to provide for the flexibility to the young mothers so that they can remain in the workforce and continue their career progressions.
Also, look, a great example for your children to look up to a mother who is working so hard as well. You know,
Oh, I
they
was the coolest mother, by the
yeah.
way. My mom is the CEO of Galatasaray. Imagine that in kindergarten and elementary school.
Exactly, exactly. But look, how commonplace was it to see women in executive roles? Look, in Turkey and actually across Europe, what were your experiences when you went into a rival club boardroom, for example?
Um, I mean, in football in Turkey, I didn't even at first realize that there were no other women, but it was quite unusual, first of all, and equally
Mm,
in Europe as well. Women were in leadership roles in other sides of the business, the corporate world, but
yeah.
football was always seen as um, rightly belonging to men, in
Mm,
Turkey. So it was, yes, structural barriers always existed, and the talent pipeline was never very, very strong in
mm,
sport. And it was also partly due to a little bit the lack of professionalization and, consistency and stability of the clubs as well.
mm.
Um, so, but hopefully things are and have been changing both in Turkey and Europe for the better in that sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, do you think your appointment helped open the door for more women in Turkey? And actually, you are a trailblazer, very much so. How did you feel about being that? And were you aware of your sort of, someone that was being looked up to for others to look at and take, experience from and advice from and look at you and think, well, if she's doing it, I can do it.
Yeah. I mean, look, at the time, I didn't think of myself as a trailblazer. I just was trying to do a good job and survive. And, especially in clubs like Galatasaray, when you have an election every 2 years, the president and 15 board members are, changing every 2 years, sometimes staying on for a while. But during my time there, over the 15 years, I worked with 6 different presidents and 10 different boards. So imagine the need to each time to prove yourself again.
Mm,
But of course, over the years, I noticed very quickly that representation was lacking. I was always the only woman in any room that I entered. And that was the case in Europe as well. And it's so important to have role models because when people see someone like them in these leadership roles, they know that
mm,
it is possible. It equally puts a lot of pressure on the person sitting in those rooms and in those roles
yeah.
because they want to, or we want to make sure that we can remain and prove that a woman can be the CEO of a club, can be the CEO of a federation, can be, any position in any position that they want. And I'm really happy to say that I know my journey has helped several women to really push for those positions and also male allies to open doors for them as well, to have more women in leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very grateful for that too. But look, I want to talk about what happened after Galatasaray. You became the general secretary at the Turkish Football Federation. I mean, how different was it representing one club to juggling more so the politics of the entire country's football?
Well, I mean, obviously, club work is very different. It's very commercial, it's very competitive, it's very high paced, week in, week out. We've
Mm,
got teams not just your senior team, all your teams traveling around the country, and especially Galatasaray is present in 13 other branches. So we had basketball, volleyball, rowing, wheelchair basketball. So it was quite an ordeal when you think about it. But at least you were working for one board, one president. Whereas when you're at a federation, you have to be taking care of the whole entire football ecosystem, from grassroots to the national teams. And you have to be neutral, you have to balance the interests of everybody, and much more diplomacy and stakeholder management. And I have to admit, I didn't do that well. It was way too political, and my job was terminated after 4 months and 5 days. It's not a period where I thought I, nailed it. So one of the downturns in my career for sure.
That's what we learn from, though, really, isn't it?
Yes,
We learn from
definitely.
things that might not work out, and you
Yeah.
learn from that and learn more about yourself than perhaps when you do succeed. But look, as your roles became more senior, no doubt the scrutiny increased as well. What tactics did you use to help block out the noise and, I guess, follow your convictions as well, particularly maybe when you've had a setback also?
To be completely honest, in my especially early years, I didn't handle scrutiny and criticism that well. I was, and I still am, a perfectionist. So I often put a lot of pressure on myself, especially because I was for a long time the only woman around, to pressure to prove myself and to perform well. And sometimes that made me believe that I had to solve everything by myself. And I thought that asking for help would make me look weak and lose that authority. Therefore, a lot of the times I was just in my head, trying to decide what is the best way forward. And I think I definitely am not alone in this. If we look at the McKinsey Workplace Survey from 2024, it says that women are 1.5 times more likely than their male counterparts to be questioned for their judgment, and also twice as likely to be called too aggressive when demonstrating the same kind of assertiveness that is seen as an important quality in their male allies and male leaders. So I think what we need to be careful about, and what worked for me, is I wasn't trying to really change myself to conform to the norm or what was expected. I quickly realized that that authenticity actually was going farther, rather than pretending that I was somebody else. So I never left emotional intelligence and using it for making, decisions. I was always a collaborative leader and a collaborative decision maker. And I tried to base my convictions on facts and experience, which I think take you farther in that sense. And that finance training actually helped me a lot as well. But equally, building coalitions, influencing other people to see your point of view, and not necessarily openly challenging the leader, because I've seen over the years that, you know, men don't like to be challenged sometimes in front of others. So I always had, pre-meetings, like pre-board meetings with the president, trying to explain why I was, promoting a certain idea or why a decision should go one way. But if I were to go back, I think I would do things a little bit differently. I would build a much better support system around myself. I didn't have a coach. I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have anyone to use as a sounding board. So now I, recommend to everybody, men or women, to set up their own personal board of directors, people they trust, people they can go to, and people who would challenge their ideas, people who would give them the cheer or be their cheerleader when that's needed. So that's actually been a very big motivator for me in the work
Mhm.
that I do with women in football, but equally with EFC now as well. So I think we have a great opportunity to build a network and ensure that the next generation of leaders are not navigating those challenges alone and that they have each other to rely on and depend on.
Yeah, you mentioned that network and the people that you surround yourself with and use them as sort of mentors and people of advice. Would they be other women and men in football, or would these be personal friends, people from different businesses and walks of life? How did you find your group?
I think it needs to be, first of all, a different group, like any group. If everybody is the same type of person, you start having those blind spots. So for me, in
Mhm.
some instances, it was people younger than me with a different look on life. And in some cases, other female leaders in international football
Mhm.
where I felt comfortable to, bounce off ideas. But
Mhm.
most importantly, it has to be people around you who would tell you the truth. Because a lot of the
Yeah,
times, as you go up higher in the ladder, um, somehow you have less people telling you the truth.
Mhm.
And, it becomes an echo chamber without those kinds of challengers in
Yeah.
your, and it has to be people better than you as well, who you can rely
Where
on
do you
for.
find these people better than you, Ebru? Come on.
Oh, yeah, there are tons of people. And I've been lucky enough in the past to have a lot of, male allies as well who were happy to. But I also get quite a few men approaching me to ask my advice and opinion as well.
Mm.
So I think it's just building that really cordial, comfortable relationship where you can open up and really say what's on your mind and test it
Yeah.
with somebody else.
Yeah, I want to move on to where you went after the Turkish Football Federation, because you did actually spend 6 to 7 years working as a consultant with UEFA and FIFA. Did you find there were actually more opportunities for women in football in Europe?
Not necessarily. I mean, my work over the years with FIFA and UEFA took me to more than 30 countries, from, Cook Islands to Paraguay to South Africa to, Finland, Bhutan, you name it. And
Mm.
what I saw was female talent was everywhere, but not all the opportunities were equally visible and distributed among the genders. So that was a common problem, all over the
Mm.
world. And over the years, I saw that the human side or the moral case of needing more gender equal leadership teams and boardrooms have started being accepted.
Yeah.
But the thing that continues to surprise me the most is how much challenge the stakeholders are facing in translating that intent into action and setting up the frameworks and the necessary interventions to drive progress. So if you look at most of the federations, confederations, they have their EDNI policies in place, but whether they're truly being implemented, internalized, and helping to move the dial is, of course, another thing. Just to give one example, so Women's World Cup in Australia in 2023, we also obviously what happened at the end of the ceremony, and literally a bomb was dropped in the not just women's football world, but globally, and just as a result of that, we put our heads together as Women in Football Board, but equally with other stakeholders and collaborators we have. And we came up with a campaign called Open Doors. And it was named after Gianni Infantino's famous speech, "Hey, I'm talking to the women, the doors are open, you just have to come and push and tell us what we need to do." So we said, what you need to do, together with your confederations and the national associations, is to ensure that at least 30% of your senior decision-making bodies are occupied by women, and also introduce independent board members and committee members who would be selected through open, transparent, and rigorous selection processes. And also introducing more things like term limits and also safeguarding principles for women and underrepresented communities in the games. So I guess you cannot blame everything on FIFA, or especially that Rubiales incident as a wrongdoing on behalf of FIFA, but it was such a blatant case of sexism and hypermasculinity, which unfortunately prevails in still parts of the game. And how, more than anything, I'm leaving aside any EDI measures, we just had to introduce a more professional environment into the football industry. It just lacked professionalism, the whole thing. So I think there is a lot of work being done globally with good intentions, but we still have a lot of, progress to make.
No, absolutely. I just want to say to everyone who's with us right now, we do have the Q&A section. So please feel free to put some questions in there. I have so many more to ask you, Ebru. So I will get through as many of mine as I possibly can. There's still so much to learn about your journey, and particularly your role as well as board of directors, as chair of Women in Football. But feel free, anyone, to put those questions in, and I will put them to you as well in a moment. But this is the role that you've had as the board of directors at WIF since 2015, I think. So yeah,
Yes.
a long time. When you applied for this role, what were you hoping to achieve?
Well, first of all, I was not aware of an organization such as Women in Football. And in 2015, when I came across it, I was like, where were you all my 15 years in football, struggling, trying to navigate through these, really intricate, male-dominated networks. But long story short, Women in Football had by that time established itself as a great network and advocacy platform, giving visibility and a voice to the women working in and around the game. And when I took over as chair in 2018, my ambition, along with our wonderful board colleagues, was to ensure two things. One, not just be a network organization or an advocacy organization, but really focus on capacity building. Identify the women that are working in the industry and also help them improve their skills, but more importantly, increase their confidence so that they can go for more senior roles in the industry. So we developed a lot of leadership courses and professional development programs over the years, and by now close to 1,000 women have gone through those programs, we're proud to say. And Women on Boards program with EFC is actually a continuation of that program and bringing it more into the European football landscape. But working on the leader by itself is not enough. We noticed that we were motivating women to go for bigger positions, but without changing the culture and the structures in the organizations they worked for, they were actually getting even more frustrated because the opportunities were not coming up. So we then launched 4 years ago a corporate membership program, and EFC is one of our wonderful corporate members as well, where we are working with the decision makers to both help improve the internal culture in the organization, but helping them rethink from recruitment to retention to upskilling opportunities and making all roles and all opportunities equally accessible and visible to both genders, equally to younger people in the organization as well. So when you work with both sides of this problem and the equation, meaning on the talent pipeline, as well as helping to create the pull from the decision makers, that's when I think change starts happening.
Yeah, and that's what we've looked to do, make the change. And they do that by conducting a lot of surveys and trying to make the change based on the outcome. In 2025, there was a workplace survey that highlighted 78% of women have experienced discrimination based on their gender in the workplace. And actually, 56% of women, so over half, working in football said no action was taken after reporting such discrimination. How do we change these numbers, and why do we feel this is still happening?
Well, first of all, we need to improve the reporting structures and introduce accountability. I think it's one thing that, 78% women face discrimination, but more importantly, they give up reporting because they feel that they're either not listened to, nothing happens, or they're afraid that it would impact their, career progression in the future. So we need that cultural shift in the organizations where psychological safety, not just to women, but everyone in the organization feels psychologically safe to raise concerns or bring up new ideas, make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. As long as nobody dies or you don't lose several $1 million, it's okay. That's how you make, progress. So good governance actually should be seen as a competitive advantage. And that's the case study that we want to work on now, to especially in that next webinar that Gaia introduced, talk about why inclusion is a competitive advantage. But the survey also has some quite positive numbers in it. So 77% of the participants said that in the future, prospects for women in football are bright, they have confidence, and 55% of them said that football is an industry where women can excel. So these figures tell us that we need to shift from that acceptance of inclusion is good business to commitment and enforcement so that we can seriously move the dial.
Yeah, let's talk about resilience, one of those, because more than 2/3 of the Women in Football survey respondents believed their resilience and determination actually helped them work in the football industry. Look, if such characteristics are actually not among your individual strengths, can these be developed?
The short answer is yes. I truly believe resilience can be developed out of, experience, mentorship, and the support networks. But should we be designing workplaces and systems that require, extraordinary resilience to grow or stay or survive? I think, the goal should not be to make individuals tougher, but making sure that the systems actually are being developed to build collective confidence and collaborative working environments that actually bring out the best in everybody. So our leadership programs obviously focus on that self-awareness and the soft skills that will help you to make a better leader. And our mentoring programs and the executive coaching that we provide in our leadership programs are great opportunities to really bring up and discuss your issues, problems, goals. And each of these conversations have proven to be game changer for some of our participants. But then again, let's fix the system. The problem is not the individuals, it's really the system.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I've got a couple of questions before we move on to the Q&A section. So thank you for those of you who have put questions to Ibru. I've had a look through some of them. So I'll get to them in a minute. Please keep them coming in because we do have time. I want to ask really about, historically, with so little room for women at the top, often woman's progress often means another woman's loss, quite often pitted against each other, and you become competitors rather than seeking another female out to kind of bond with. They often put one against another or many against another. Through the EFC's Women on Board program, look, how critical is it that women help other women to rise with them?
I think just combining the statistic that Charlie gave, 90,000 people work across our 800 clubs, and Gaia's assessment of 30% women and 18% women in leadership. We're talking about 27,000 women working in Europe, roughly, and about 15 to 18,000 in some kind of mid to senior level leadership. But today we have about 150 here, right? Where are the rest of the people? So the importance of women helping women comes from identifying other females working in your country, in your club, and bringing them into this network. And B, the programs like our joint program, Women on Board, help build the pipeline. But one thing that EFC has done that is extremely different compared to anyone else in this industry is the sustainability targets that they have put in. It's not a quote. I mean, it is a quota, soft quota as well in the end, but there are safety mechanisms, failure mechanisms. If somebody is not elected to the board, then there's a way to co-opt and ensure that each subdivision is represented on the board by a woman. So I think we just need to think what is the best way to bring that diversity into our boardrooms and break groupthink once again, not because we are in 2026 and this is the normal thing to do, but because it truly increases the quality of the debate, quality of the outcomes and decisions. Women do think differently. And there's no reason why women can't help other women. It doesn't help to be the queen bee. It doesn't help to be the first person or the only person. Our aim should always be to make sure that we're not the last one. And that's been my motivation all these years.
Yeah, exactly. One thing that women in football's done to me, I'll just put my own little story out here. I signed up for quite a while, but actually started going to some of the in-person conferences and events that they had on, and actually connected with other women and females in my industry that we are pitted against, that I see as competitors working for other broadcasters. For those tuning in, I work over in the UK for Sky Sports, but some of my best friends now and females in the industry that I go to for advice work for the BBC, work for ITV, work for TNT, for DAZN, all these other channels out there. And actually, I feel like I have a group of people that I belong to now, which I didn't know existed. I didn't know I could reach out to these other women and females, and you very much have each other's back. And as somebody in my mid-40s heading to a different stage of my career, I look to a few who were above me doing incredible things, presenting on Match of the Day, and those youngsters as well in their 20s who can give me advice on an outlook on things that I hadn't seen myself. So it does open your eyes up to sort of different types of female, different ages, different backgrounds, and we very much formed quite a unique bond. We have our little WhatsApp groups and things, and I treasure that so much, and probably wouldn't be where I was if I didn't have this incredible group of other women as well. So I just thought I'd just throw that little one out there myself. Women in Football actually published a survey last September, and you said the goal is to turn evidence into action and action into lasting systemic change. So look, as Women in Football gets ready to celebrate its 20th birthday, they've been going for 2 decades. What would that change look like for you if you had a magic wand, say?
I think the change needs to happen again at different levels. On one hand, I know that the quota debate is not an easy one, but without a quota, just to give the example, I was the first woman to be elected to the what was ECA back then in 2010, and after I stepped off to join the Turkish Football Federation, there wasn't another woman elected for another 9 years into the board. And but now that there are some targets and some, quota places, there's at least representation. So I believe in, some kind of targets or quotas, especially quotas, as long as they're not seen as a ceiling. The quota then becomes, okay, you've got your 1 seat, no more. I don't like that. And secondly, if for filling those seats, you do not look wide enough to find the best candidates, but they become a little bit the token candidate or something,
Mm,
someone who is,
mm,
close to the ownership or something that doesn't involve a transparent selection process, let's say. And
mm,
then making sure that, inclusion is a KPI on senior leadership performance targets, right? And people are held accountable for not creating those psychologically safe and inclusive environments. And once again, I'm not saying this only for women in the workplace, but also I know that a lot of men are not feeling psychologically safe in their work environments as well. So
mm,
adding inclusion metrics into the KPIs, but equally opening the doors for younger leaders and giving opportunities to them. Because
mm,
sometimes I feel that I'm 57. Can a 20-year-old, 22-year-old relate with my journey? Don't we need some 30-year-old, emerging leaders to be their role models? Probably we
mhm,
do. So I think we need to also work in that next level of talent as well.
mm.
And the magic wand, obviously, um, I think, the change would really happen if we're not talking about any more diverse leadership as an exception, but when it becomes
Mm,
the norm simply.
mm. No, absolutely. Okay, well, I'm looking at some of the questions now, and a couple are not questions, but just want to read out from Ekem Özkan. As a Turkish woman working at EFC, I can say firsthand you are a great inspiration. So I just thought I'd put that out there to you.
Oh, thank you,
And to
Ecem.
Ingrid Van Hele, the Women on Board program has been a real game changer in my professional life. She says, do not hesitate to subscribe. It's a unique opportunity to grow and expand your leadership journey. So a message there about how important that has been to her, the Women on Board program. Laura Kelly asks, my understanding is that the Women on Board program runs predominantly as an in-person event, which requires buy-in from member clubs. Could this program be run entirely online as a more accessible alternative program? What do you think about that, maybe?
Um, we have, as Women in Football, run some fully online programs, but the
Mm,
kind of bonding and networking is not the same as the in-person impact, but we'll definitely take it into consideration. Obviously, both for scheduling and logistical purposes, as well as cost-wise for some of the participants, that could also
mm,
be, one to be considered. Gaia will make note of that.
yeah. Okay. And from Kate Lawrence, she says, thank you for your time, as always, for women in the industry, Ebru. You've achieved so much, but is there anything you still want to achieve personally and for the industry? I'm sure there is. What is it?
Well, I think I've said this several times before. Don't let my husband hear it. He
Okay.
hates it when I say it. But one day I want to run for presidency of Galatasaray, the team that is always in my heart. Whether I win it or not is not important. I think the gesture of putting yourself out there for consideration is a major one for Turkey. So that's one target way out somewhere, and also making sure that we see at least one woman on each of the club boards and each of the governing body boards. That would make such a big difference, I think, because I know firsthand. I currently sit in 6 boards, and how a woman's voice, and even better, a second woman's voice, can
Mm.
change the conversation and challenge the status quo.
Okay, I love that. Finally, what's the best piece of advice that you've been given in your career?
Okay. I talked about how I was not very good with criticism and scrutiny. And one time, an ex-player who was in a very senior position turned around to me and said, after I was challenging a decision about me a little bit, he said, "You have to learn to be a good loser." and I was not a good loser. And that really stuck with me because you cannot change the outcome if a decision has been taken. You probably cannot change the outcome, but you just have to come to terms with it and
Okay.
accept that you were not selected, you didn't get the role, or you didn't get the promotion. So I thought, especially for me, as someone who is always a perfectionist and a high achieving personality, that was a moment of truth that there are times that I will lose and I won't always win.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. That was so insightful. Really thank you for your time. We know how busy you are. That was wonderful. Thanks to everyone as well for putting those questions to Ebru and for joining in as well today. There's lots of exciting things to come. Please remember that satisfaction survey as well. Obviously, it really, really helps to get your opinions, and it will take 10 minutes to fill that out, as Gaia said. So just a little reminder about that for you. So thank you for joining us today, for everyone who has spoken, of course, to Yvonne and Charlie and Gaia for having me along for the ride. There's going to be a poll here, so please go on. I'm going to select it myself as well, actually. I'm sure you've all taken away an awful lot as well. So very much looking forward to the future opportunities that Gaia has shared. At the click of a button, go ahead. The poll. Thank you, as I've already said, to Ebru, to Yvonne from Women in Football, and the whole team at the EFC. It does definitely feel like an exciting time to be a woman in the game. And thank you to the male colleagues as well who've joined your allyship. It's really, really important. So congratulations on the launch of everyone's game, FC. Very much looking forward to seeing the impact in the months ahead as well. So thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed hosting the webinar. Certainly learned a lot myself, and I hope you all have too. Thank you very much indeed.